Hey guys, it's Ann Yorks, the owner of the Flower Box, and I have a full cookie tutorial for you today. Today, I'm going to show you step by step how to make 9 different cookies to create your own Thanksgiving dinner. Now, you can make one or you can make them all or mix and match your favorite designs, but I'm going to show you each one. We'll take a look at the turkey, dinner roll, the side dish, the casserole dish, the gravy boat, the berries and leaves, the whipped cream, and of course, the pumpkin pie with extra whipped cream. This is going to be such a fun cookie tutorial, so let's cookie it up. Let's start the tutorial with this casserole dish. In my casserole dish, I am going to be making some green bean casserole. So I'm just outlining the dish first. I'm using a light colored Buckeye Brown, and then I have some forest green in my piping bag. When I'm doing outlines, I love to use tip number 2. I find that is the perfect tip for outlines to hold back that flood icing. Then I will flood in alternating areas. So flood in the green bean section first, let that dry in front of a fan for about 45 minutes to an hour, and then I'm going to go in and flood in the casserole dish. Once that section has a chance to dry, I'm going to add the details. These details are pretty simple. I'm adding the green beans. I've switched my tip to number 3 to get a larger piped detail. And then on my light brown, I'm actually adding those crunchy onions, and I've switched my tip to a star tip 13 to give that a little bit of texture. Now, this is not a difficult cookie to make. None of these really are, because if you are making all 9, I wanted to make sure that they were simple enough to go through the full set without too much stress. Then on the casserole, I'm just adding some piped lines with that pumpkin orange, and then I'm also going to add some golden yellow just to add a little bit of color and something interesting, but again, without too much work. Now, if you don't have pumpkin orange at home, you can easily make your own. You can start with some sunset orange and add a dot or 2 of brown, and that'll give you a beautiful burnt orange that comes off as that pumpkin color. Let's take a look at this side dish. I'm using the forest green for the bowl, and in this bowl, I'm going to add some mashed potatoes, but you can do peas, corn. You can change the color of your bowl and really customize this Thanksgiving dinner to your family favorites. Once I have that cookie outlined, again, I'm going to go in and flood those alternating areas. I do like to be nice and generous with the icing so that I have a nice full flat surface once the icing dries. Now it's time to flood in the lip on the bowl, and I also want to flood in the butter, and then we're ready for some details. If you need to reshape your butter, go ahead and pop your cookie tool, your boo-boo stick, or a scribe in there just to tap out those corners. To keep these cookies consistent, I'm going to add those orange and yellow lines at the bottom. That's just to keep our dishes looking similar, even though they're different colors. And a few wavy lines using white piping icing and tip number 2 to create those pillows of mashed potatoes. Now for the star of the show, we're going to create the turkey platter. And I like to start out by piping the bone on the turkey leg. And then once I have that, I'm going to add the leg itself. Outline the exterior of the bird. And then don't forget the platter plate. Now it's time to flood in, and because the main section of the turkey is in the background, I'm going to start with that first. I want to flood the background, and then I will flood the turkey leg, which is in the foreground. And I only do that once that has a chance to dry. And I prefer to flood in the platter at the same time as well. Now this cookie set does have quite a few icing colors, so I did keep that platter white. If you wanted to, you could also make it a light blue or even a silver, just to change it up a little bit. Now I'm going to add some greens down at the bottom, just some stems and some leaves and some berries, really to add some texture and also to add some color to this cookie. These cookies are a lot of fun. They're actually cinnamon roll flavored cookies. The cookie itself is flavored cinnamon and the icing is flavored caramel using the Lorian's flavors. We are having lots of fun in the Flower Box Club this season exploring with flavors. And so I have been making my cookies all different flavors. It is so delicious. I think this one is a favorite. Now I have a tip number 349 on my green icing bag, and I'm just going to pull out some of those leaves. I love that tip because it makes the leaves just the perfect shape. It's super easy. And then I'm just going to add a couple of cranberries onto the side of the platter. It looks so festive and so delicious, and I promise if you show up with Thanksgiving dinner and cookies, your family will never forget it. Now this particular cookie, the turkey leg, I think this could be a great cookie for personalization. It's a pretty simple cookie. It only has 2 icing areas, and I'm just going to flood in the bone and let that dry. That's a small icing area, so it really doesn't need much time to dry before that icing is set up. And then you can go in and flood the main turkey leg. But you could easily personalize that turkey leg section and use it as a place setting at your Thanksgiving dinner table. This would be a good standalone cookie if you're looking for just one from this set to try. The dinner roll is a small cookie, but you really can't have Thanksgiving dinner without some dinner rolls. So I definitely wanted to include this. I'm actually adding just this little crust area on the inside using some white icing. This is where the crust on the roll has split open, and I'm just adding this little burst and using my flood icing to do it. So there really isn't a wrong way to do this. And then once you have that flooded in, you can let that icing area dry for a few minutes to let that icing crust over, or you can just jump right in and add in the brown for the dinner roll. Once that has a chance to dry, you can go back in and add a little bit of the brown flood icing. Use a food brush and you can just dab away. And this is kind of nice because it just adds a little texture that roll was baked. You could even hit this with an airbrush if you were going for extra credit, but I almost feel like this texture is enough just to add something interesting to this otherwise really simple cookie. The gravy dish cracks me up. We're going to outline this cookie with white icing. Again, I'm using tip number 2. And this cookie is going to be pretty simple. We're just adding these white icing areas, and we'll add a little opening up at the top for the gravy. All right, time to flood in. We're going to flood in those alternating areas. I'm just starting with the base and the gravy, especially the gravy because it's inside the dish, it's in the background. And then that's a small icing area. Once that has a chance to dry, I'm going to go back in and flood the main body of the gravy boat and the handle. These cookie cutters, you can find them on flowerbox.com. You can purchase them as a bundle, or you can also purchase each cookie cutter individually. When you pick up the bundle, you do save 10%. And we also have the STL files available too. So if you have a 3D printer at home, you can buy just the file. It's much cheaper, and you can print your own cookies. We also have the bundle available and each cookie cutter individually for STLs. This is such a simple accent cookie. These are the cranberries and leaves, or berries and leaves as we call them, because if you were doing this cookie during the summer, you could choose a lighter green for the leaves and a blue and make some really cute blueberry cookies. But for this set, we're going with the cranberry flavor. So I am using that Tulip Red for the berry color, and I'm using the forest green for the leaf color. Now, when mistakes happen, like that little icing pop, don't panic. You can just always scrape that little section off of the cookie and repipe it. Once that's flooded in, you can't see any of those mistakes that they happened. I'm going to flood the leaves in first just because they are in the background. Let those dry and then flood in each berry individually. That'll create that beautiful definition between each icing area. These icing sections are pretty small. They don't take that long to dry. Really, 15 minutes, 20 minutes in front of the fan, you'll be able to tell once that icing is set up. Now it's time to add some details. I'm just going to add a little section on each of the berries and then some stems on the leaves. If you're looking for a full list of icing colors that are featured in this video, check the status below. I've made an easy list for you just to make sure that you have all of these colors, or if you don't, that you can make a plan for substituting colors that you do have at home. This is my favorite cookie of the set. This is the whipped cream bottle. And again, I'm using that Tulip Red on the outline of this cookie. I'm going to also add the main body of this cookie. This is a nice size cookie. However, it is only 3 icing colors, and so it's not too difficult to pull this one together. Once you have that outlined, I'm just going to add this label section in the center. This is where we're going to pipe the words whipped cream. And yeah. Now I'm flooding in each section, and I'm being nice and generous with that icing. I do want nice, clean transitions between those colors, so I'm real careful as I'm piping up against those outlines to keep it nice and even. Now I'm flooding in the label section and also the little section at the top of the bottle. Let those areas dry, and then you're ready for some text. Now, I am using a copy cake projector on the text. You can also use a Kodak Luma or other Bluetooth projectors. I've linked a few below that are really popular. And these make it just a little bit easier to pipe that text. I have a link to this text graphic on the cookie cutter page, whether it is the whipped cream bottle or the full bundle. I'm using a tip number 1.5, and I'm adding those letters individually, overlapping them so that they look like they're cursive. Now for the final detail on this cookie, which is the outline around that area. And this one is done, and that one's going to bring out lots of laughs, I have a feeling. Everybody loves a little extra whipped cream. Speaking of extra whipped cream, I did include another pumpkin pie design with this set. Even though we have lots of pumpkin pie cutters on our website, I felt like I couldn't do Thanksgiving dinner without another pie cookie. So this one we are calling Pie with Extra Whipped Cream. You can make this pumpkin pie, pecan pie, whatever your family favorite is. It can be any pie you want it to be, but it does have 4 stacks of whipped cream. Some of those icing areas are a little small, and so if you don't want to see cracks or craters, I like to pipe a little line of piping icing underneath before I flood. That prevents that icing from sinking in or cracking when it dries. Once I have those alternating areas flooded in on the whipped cream, I'm going to flood in generously that pumpkin pie area. Now it's time to let that dry and come back. I'm adding another little piped line for structure, and then I'm going to flood in that whipped cream. I'm using the Tulip Red on the pan, and it just looks so beautiful with that pumpkin pie color, especially once I add the details of the crust. So this has dried. I still have that star tip number 13 on my light brown icing. I love the texture of that tip. I'm just going to pipe that wavy line, and it adds such a fun, crinkly looking crust on the outside. And because we're matching all of our plateware, I'm adding those 2 lines at the base of this plate. Dessert is ready. I hope you guys really enjoyed seeing this step-by-step look at the Thanksgiving dinner cookies. Again, icing colors are listed below. You can find the cutters in our shop, both the actual cutter and the STL files. And if you have any questions about recreating these cookies, please pop them below. I would love to help out. And if you make these cookies, definitely tag us at the Flower Box Shop. We are on social media, and we would love to see what you make. Until next time, happy decorating!